It was a kind of evening where the world felt heavy, the sun bleeding into horizon, the heat rising in shimmering waves off the cracked blacktop. Savannah Cole shifted in her seat, staring through the bug-splattered windshield of her semi, parked outside her new rental in a sleepy corner of Stone Ridge. After months of hauling freight cross-country, she thought she'd finally found some peace, a neighborhood where folks kept to themselves, and a battered driveway long enough to tuck her rig away without blocking traffic. But peace, it seemed, was just an illusion. As she pulled the keys from the ignition and reached for her duffel, two unfamiliar SUVs rolled up, both flashing red and blue lights that weren't quite right. Her two German shepherds, Bravo and Delta, lifted their heads in the sleeper cab, a low, warning growl rumbling from deep in their chests. Savannah narrowed her eyes. The men climbing out of those trucks wore tin uniforms, badges clipped to their belts, but no official insignia, no county logos, no patches she recognized. Stone Ridge Homeowner Security. One of them barked, waving a laminated card at her face like it meant something. You're in violation of HOA Code 7.3, commercial vehicle presence after hours. Savannah tightened her grip on Bravo's leash and smiled, slow and deliberate. They didn't know what they were stepping into. Not yet, anyway. And if you're watching this from a place where people mind their own business, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this one ends. Savannah kept her voice even, her military instincts kicking in. I'm not under your authority, she said, stepping down from the cab, boots hitting the gravel with a solid thunk. The taller man, crew cut, sunglasses even in the fading light, stepped closer, hand resting on the baton at his belt. This is private property, lady. You parked that monstrosity here again. We'll have it towed. Fine. Maybe even impounded. His partner snickered, scanning her plates like they'd already decided she was guilty. Savannah's stomach twisted, not from fear, but from rage so cold it burned. She'd seen this act before, in third-world cities where uniforms were just costumes for bullies. Show me your authority, she demanded. City, county, state, which one? The man just sneered. Stone Ridge HOA. That's all we need. HOA cops. Self-appointed enforcers with nothing better to do than chase a woman, who work harder in a week than they did in a year. Bravo and Delta stayed at her side, their bodies coiled, ready. They could sense it too. The wrongness, the tension vibrating in the air. Then came the real gut punch. A woman in a polo shirt and clipboard emerged from the back of one SUV, smiling like a cat who'd cornered a mouse. You'll also need to remove your dogs, she chirped. Per HOA regulations, no aggressive breeds allowed within residential boundaries, especially not trained attack animals. Savannah's hands clenched into fists. She hadn't survived 2 tours overseas to be bossed around by a bunch of bored suburban tyrants. Attack animals? Bravo and Delta had saved lives. They were more disciplined than half the human Savannah knew. She could feel the storm rising in her blood. But these people had no idea who they were dealing with. Not yet. Savannah took one slow, measured step forward, Bravo and Delta shadowing her, so precisely it was like they shared a single heartbeat. Listen carefully, she said, her voice low enough that the clipboard woman had to lean in. These dogs aren't here for show. They're federally certified military K9s. They don't move unless I say so. For the first time, the woman's bright, smug smile faltered. The taller man shifted uncomfortably, his bat in hand twitching. Savannah clocked it all. The fear behind their fake bravado, the way their eyes darted toward the shepherds and back again. If you try to touch me or them, you'll be making the worst mistake of your life, Savannah continued, calm as a coiled rattlesnake. And no flimsy HOA badge is going to save you. Silence fell heavy in the humid dusk. Somewhere down the street, a screen door banged and a kid's laughter floated through the air, like the world had no idea what was boiling over right there on her patch of gravel. The clipboard woman straightened, her lips pressing into a thin line. We'll be back with real law enforcement, she snapped. You'll regret refusing to cooperate. Savannah just smiled, slow, deliberate. You do that. She took a deliberate step back, unclipping Bravo and Delta's leashes. They didn't move, not a muscle, but the message was clear. She didn't need to touch them again to unleash hell. if it came to that. The men hesitated, weighing their options. Then, with a grunt and a few muttered curses, they retreated, engines roaring as the SUVs peeled out of her driveway, tires kicking up gravel. Savannah exhaled slowly, watching the dust settle. They weren't done with her. She knew that, but they had no idea. Neither was she. The next morning, Savannah was jolted awake by the sound of pounding fists on her front door. Bravo was already at alert, Delta pacing, ears pinned back, both dogs reading attention even before Savannah's boots hit the floor. When she cracked the door open, she found 2 sheriff's deputies standing on the stoop. Real uniforms this time, badges glinting under the hot morning sun. "Ma'am, we received a complaint about illegal parking and dangerous animals on the premises," the older deputy said, voice clipped and official. Behind them, the same HOA SUVs idled at the curb, the clipboard woman smirking from a passenger seat. Savannah felt her jaw tighten. This wasn't about rules. It was about intimidation. She stepped fully outside, letting the deputy see the rig parked neatly on her own property line. Tucked and clean, no laws broken, no traffic blocked. She motioned to Bravo and Delta, both sitting perfectly still beside her, their bodies loose but ready. "These are trained service animals," she said evenly. "And that truck, registered to this address. Zoned residential agricultural, which means I'm fully within my rights." She pulled out a laminated copy of property code she'd printed last night, a precaution she hadn't realized she'd need so soon. The younger deputy's face shifted, uncertainty flickering across his features as he scanned the document. The older one scratched the back of his neck, clearly annoyed, not at her, but at being dragged into something so petty. "Look, Ms. Cole," he said, voice softening, "technically, you're not doing anything wrong, but if they keep filing complaints, it's going to create a nuisance. Might be better to find somewhere else for the truck." Savannah's heart hammered, but she stayed cool. "No, sir," she said, steady. "I'm not the one who needs to move." Savannah watched the deputies exchange a look, something unspoken passing between them. She knew that look. She'd seen it overseas when local officials got cozy with the wrong kind of power. Sure enough, as the HOA crew lingered at the curb, one of the deputies leaned in, dropping his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Off the record, you're not the first one they tried this with." Savannah's pulse kicked up. "What do you mean?" she asked, careful to keep her tone neutral. The older deputy flicked his gaze toward the clipboard woman, who was now pretending to scroll her phone. "Couple months back, a guy with a boat parked in his own driveway. Perfectly legal. They harassed him so bad he moved out." He paused. "And rumor is, some of these HOA board members are tied up in local real estate. Drive folks out, scoop up the properties cheap." Savannah's stomach sank, anger flickering into something colder, sharper. This wasn't just about her rig. They were trying to run her out, targeting her because she didn't fit their suburban fantasy. A woman with dirt under her nails, muscles in her arms, and 2 war dogs at her side. She clenched her jaw so tight it ached. "Thanks for the heads-up, deputy," she said, stepping back toward her porch. Bravo and Delta flanked her, silent, powerful shadows. As the deputies left, Savannah made a silent vow. These people want to fight? Fine. But they were about to learn, real quick, that picking a fight with a combat vet wasn't the smartest play, especially one who still knew how to outflank, outlast, and outfight anyone who tried to corner her. They hadn't just poked the wrong bear. They woke her up. By nightfall, Savannah sat alone on the front steps, her gaze steady on the dark street stretched out before her. Bravo rested his heavy head on her knee, Delta at her side like a silent sentinel. The ache in her chest wasn't just anger anymore. It was something heavier. Betrayal. Isolation. She'd fought for this country, and somehow, here she was, back on her heels against a bunch of HOA bullies who treated her like an outsider, like she didn't belong. Word was already getting around the neighborhood. A few drive-bys, slow, pointed, headlights lingering too long on her truck, her dogs, her front porch. Whispered conversations she could just barely hear when she walked into the tiny corner store. One lady even clutched her purse tighter when Savannah reached for a carton of milk, like she was dangerous. like she was the problem. It's happening all over again, Savannah thought bitterly, memories flashing back to towns she passed through after deployment, where the stairs were heavy and the welcome was cold. Only this time, it wasn't strangers. It was supposed to be her neighbors. She tightened her hand in Bravo's thick fur, grounding herself. You faced worse than this, she reminded herself. You didn't survive Fallujah to get chased out of Stone Ridge by a pack of fake cops and snobs. Still, the loneliness gnawed at her. She missed her unit. People who had her back without question. Here, she was on her own, or so it seemed. Across the street, an old man with a Vietnam flag sticker on his pickup lifted 2 fingers from his porch chair in a slow, silent salute. Savannah felt something loosen in her chest. Maybe she wasn't as alone as they wanted her to believe. The next morning, Savannah brewed her coffee strong and black, her mind sharpening with every bitter sip. She wasn't the type to roll over, never had been. And if these HOA bullies wanted a war of attrition, they were about to learn they picked the wrong soldier. She spent the better part of the day making calls. The local sheriff's office, the county code enforcement, even the state's attorney general hotline. With each conversation, she laid it out plain. Fake HOA enforcement, harassment, attempted illegal seizure of property. Most listened politely. A few sounded skeptical. But one, a paralegal from the state's Department of Consumer Affairs, leaned in. If they're posing as law enforcement without authorization, he said, they're violating serious impersonation statutes. That's jail time if it sticks. Savannah smiled grimly. Now she had a thread to pull. She also reached out to a buddy from her deployment days, Rick Morales, a fellow MP who'd retired and moved just a few counties over. Come on down, Rick, she said, laughing darkly into the phone. Bring a lawn chair. Might be a show. And Bravo and Delta? He asked, amused. Savannah scratched behind Delta's ears, watching his tail thump lazily. Locked and loaded, metaphorically speaking. By evening, Rick rolled up in his battered Ford, combat boots still dusty, ball cap pulled low. One look at the situation, and he let out a low whistle. Whole HOA's running a con. Oldest trick in the book. Pressure, intimidate, isolate. You gonna let him? Savannah just grinned, a glint in her eye that Bravo and Delta immediately mirrored. No, Rick, she said, rising to her feet. I'm gonna break their game wide open. And when the real cops show up next time, they're gonna be wearing cuffs, not badges. It didn't take long. 2 days later, right on cue, the same HOA convoy rolled up, SUVs rumbling low like a warning drumbeat. Only this time, Savannah was ready. She stood in the middle of her gravel driveway, arms folded, Bravo and Delta flanking her like sentinels carved out of stone. Rick leaned against the porch rail behind her, camera phone already rolling, a slow grin spreading across his face. The clipboard woman hopped out first, striding toward Savannah with a thick manila envelope in hand. Final notice, she said crisply. Move the truck, remove the animals, or face immediate removal proceedings. She said it loud enough that a few neighbors peeking through their blinds could hear every word. Savannah didn't move. She just cocked her head slightly, listening, because there it was, under all the bluster, the telltale whoop of approaching sirens. The clipboard woman's smile faltered, and when the marked sheriff's cruisers pulled up, real ones, with flashing lights and full authority, her face drained of color, deputies poured out, weapons holstered but hands ready. Step away from the resident. One barked, "Now!" Clipboard stumbled back, raising her hands like she couldn't believe this was happening. The taller fake cop tried to argue, jabbing a finger toward Savannah. "She's violating HOA codes. You're impersonating law enforcement," the deputy cut him off sharply, which is a felony in this state. One by one, the HOA enforcers were lined up and cuffed. Miranda rights read loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. Savannah stood silent, Delta pressed her thigh. Bravo's tongue lolling in the heat, both animals calm, but watchful. Rick chuckled under his breath. "Textbook takedown," he muttered, capturing every second. Savannah allowed herself a small, hard smile. This was her house, her land, and nobody was going to take it from her. The dust hadn't even settled when the neighborhood started to shift. The same folks who once watched her from behind curtains now lingered on their porches, curious, cautious. Word traveled faster than wildfire about the woman with the ward dogs who stood her ground, about the HOA thugs hauled off in cuffs. By the next morning, Savannah found a plate of brownies sitting neatly on her porch railing, a scribbled note tucked underneath. "Glad you're here. We're sorry we didn't step up sooner." No name, just understanding, just belonging. Savannah leaned against the doorframe, coffee steaming in her hand. Bravo sprawled across the threshold like a king surveying his domain. Delta snored softly beside him, exhausted from the week's adrenaline crash. Rick was long gone, back to his county, his kids, his life. But not before clapping her on the back and saying, "You ever need backup again, you call me." Savannah smiled at the memory, feeling the weight in her chest ease. She hadn't just won a battle over gravel and property lines. She carved out something bigger: respect, community, the right to exist without bending herself into something more acceptable. A black pickup rumbled by, the old man with the Vietnam sticker nodding once, slow and deep from behind the wheel. Savannah lifted her mug in return. Mutual recognition, mutual survival. She thought of all the times she'd been told to keep her head down, stay quiet, don't rock the boat. Not anymore. Not here. This driveway, this rig, this home, they were hers. Earned. Fought for. Kept. As the sun rose higher and the small town yawned into another slow, sticky day, Savannah whistled low between her teeth. Bravo and Delta perked up, ready. "Come on, boys," she murmured. "Let's remind em why we're still standing." Weeks later, Savannah leaned against the side of her truck, watching a fresh coat of sun bake the town into a soft, golden glow. The summer heat was thick, but the tension that once choked the air was gone. The HOA board had crumbled. Resignations handed in with barely a whimper. Once the truth about their little security patrol went public. Lawsuits followed, not hers. She didn't have to lift a finger. The state pressed charges on impersonation alone in the neighborhood, once held hostage by fear, turned on the ones who'd kept them silent. Savannah hadn't planned on staying long. When she first parked her rig in Stone Ridge, she thought it would be just another stop, another temporary place between long stretches of asphalt and lonely mile markers. But now, it was home, a real one. Kids pedaled by on bikes, waving shyly. Someone from 2 streets over shouted hello as he walked his dog. The world didn't feel so heavy here anymore. Bravo stretched luxuriously in the sun, Delta rolling onto his back with a huff, pure contentment. They were retired now, but Savannah saw the flicker of their old training still alive in them, always ready to stand as she needed them, always ready to protect. She crouched down, scratching behind their ears, her throat tightening just a little. "We're good, boys," she whispered. "We're safe." For the first time in a long time, Savannah felt it. Not just safety, but peace. Hard one. Real. The kind you don't get handed. The kind you have to earn. She stood, surveying her little piece of gravel, cracked concrete in stubborn survival, feeling every inch of it settle into her bones. Her home, her fight, her victory, and she'd be damned if she ever let anyone take it from her again.